Welcome to the Show Me the Shift podcast with Coach Lenora, certified life coach, HR certified professional, international best-selling author, and creator of the Victorious Movement. A members-only community where she coaches her members from stuck to action and from scarcity to abundance in the areas of mindset, goal setting, and monetization online. The Show Me the Shift podcast was created to encourage people to action in the areas of their career, purpose, and how everyday people can generate an income by being an affiliate of other people's products. Here is our host, Coach Lenora.
Hello. How is everybody doing on this beautiful, beautiful Wednesday? Hopefully everybody is enjoying the day so far. Good morning. So today it's Career Corner Wednesday. I had to think of what today was. So today is Wednesday and we're talking about careers. And so based on that, I'm going to jump into some information that I wanted to share about going through the interview process, because I feel as though a lot of times people think that everything's going to flow in a certain way, that certain things are going to happen. And sometimes candidates simply get ghosted. And so what I wanted to do today was just to talk about that, because I feel like sometimes people are just, discouraged, or they feel as though like, how is it that, I applied, I haven't heard anything, maybe they don't hear anything ever. And then there's other instances where, well, they don't hear anything, but it could be weeks, it could be months of not hearing anything. And you're thinking from the perspective of a candidate, like, wow, like, why are they not reaching out? Why aren't they saying anything? They should know that people are really seriously looking for work and people are out here struggling. And so why wouldn't they follow up? Why wouldn't they follow through? And so I'm just going to give a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of some things that potentially could happen as to why even very good candidates who are, checking all the boxes, doing everything right, and even in those instances, they may not necessarily hear anything and feel as though they're being ghosted. So based on that, I wanted to just jump right in and just share that first and foremost, you very well could do absolutely everything right. You could, have the great resume. You could have applied within the perfect time window. Your resume could have gotten to the recruiter. Your resume could have gotten to the hiring leader. And yet, it still might not be that you are the selected candidate for the role. And that's just a possibility that comes with any time that you apply. Hiring can be extremely subjective, from the process of the recruiter who's reviewing the resume to the leader who is looking at the resume and making decisions in regards to the next steps. And so something that you just may not be aware of is that there are decisions that can be made almost at any level or stage of the process that even sometimes the recruiter or hiring manager aren't necessarily responsible for or can control. And so there are things that are just inner workings that are sometimes at play. And I'll talk about some of those things throughout this conversation today. But just to know, don't let it hinder you. Don't let it frustrate you. Don't feel as though, why is this happening to me? Or why does it feel like it's consistently happening to me? It can just be what's going on with corporations as a whole. So please just keep that in mind, okay? But one of the things is that some companies are just really bad at communication. They just have poor communication when it comes to follow up and follow through. And that is not your fault. You can't take bear the burden of that. It's just simply that those companies are just not good at the communication cycle. It could be that particular recruiter who isn't really good at the follow-up and making sure that all of their candidates are dispositioned appropriately, that they know exactly where they stand, that they're not, communicating in such a way that the candidate feels like, okay, I've been seen at least, or I at least know that this is the stage of the process that I'm at, or I've been rejected, and the recruiter may not even follow up on that. It could be that the company doesn't have the appropriate systems in place. If it's a smaller, maybe mom and pop shop, maybe everything is a manual process. And in the process of it being manual, things can slip through the cracks. And so just knowing that sometimes within a within a company itself, the communication just may be lacking. It may not be there. And that is truly unfortunate. But if you're working with bigger companies, bigger organizations, even in those instances, it could be that it is just the individual that is not giving the follow up and follow through as opposed to the umbrella of the corporation itself. I know personally, as I had been a leader over some recruiters, there were some recruiters who simply were not good at the dispositioning of the candidates, of telling the candidates a final answer. They would close out a requisition, but they wouldn't have let that particular or all the candidates within that requisition know, hey, this is where we landed. We hired somebody. We closed the job and didn't hire anybody. We, kept the search going. Like they're just not appropriately communicating. And that's where, in my instance as a leader, I would get with that person and say, wait, hold on, this rec was closed. There wasn't any kind of follow up with these candidates. They've been waiting for weeks, sometimes a month or more, just to wait and hear what is going on. And so I would tell them, can go back, reopen the job, make sure these folks know exactly where they stand, and then you can reclose it so that way, the candidates aren't just left in limbo. So that's just not a good place that anyone wants to be in. And if that particular recruiter were in that situation, or even if it were a hiring leader who's not giving quick and fast feedback, they wouldn't want to be in that situation either if they were looking for work and knowing that I'm just hanging out and waiting to see when somebody's going to say whether or not I am eligible for this particular role. So just know that sometimes it's just truly about poor communication. Another situation is there are different elements, like I mentioned before, that are at play that are simply out of everybody's control. And one of those things could be when there is a hiring freeze or some kind of change that took place where maybe within the organization, the leadership changed, whether it's the hiring leader or a VP or senior leadership, a CEO, and that CEO says, you know what? Now that this change has happened, I want to put a pause on all hiring. I want to look at everything from, what's going on in these particular areas, and then be able to make decisions on which positions truly need to be filled versus which ones don't. And so based on that, if there's a hiring freeze, that's truly something that no one can control. So the recruiter has to go along with exactly what those elements are of that freeze. So it could be everybody who currently has an offer. Yes, we can go ahead and go through. Anybody who has their interview, let's go ahead and cancel those because of the fact that we may not even have a position for that person to fill, and we don't want to waste anybody's time in doing that. So that's some of the instances. It could be that hiring leader, maybe they have the resumes on their desk and it comes down that there is a new boss for that hiring leader or a freeze that needs to take place because of budgets. And we're getting close to the end of the year and we don't have as much money to spend on new salaries as we did in January. So therefore, we're going to put a little pause on this. Or it could be any number of situations that could take place that could make it where a company feels as though there's a freeze. It could be in regards to, I heard about this recently with the tariffs that have been going on, right? That there are some companies that are so intertwined with the cost of materials coming into the country and different things like that, that they actually can't afford to continue to hire until all of the things get worked out. And so based on that, that could be a reason why someone doesn't move forward in a process. Just know that those companies should communicate those things to you and make you aware of the fact that, hey, this is something that's going on. This is something that's happening. We can't move forward with you yet. However, we're keeping you in mind. We're keeping your information right here so that if and when we're able to pick back up the hiring process, you can be one of the first ones in line to be able to jump right in where you left off and continue through the process. Sometimes it will require a reapplication, like, oh, I applied, but we had to close down the requisition. We had to close down the job. We're not going to be able to move you forward in this one, but we'll repost and then you can reapply when that time comes. So again, some of these things are going to happen mid-process. It's going to be out of your control, the recruiter's control, the leader's control. It's just where, unfortunately, a pause happens. And based on that, you're just not going to be able to finish out the process. And you may feel a little ghosted, but ideally it should be that that person is communicating in such a way that you know where you stand. Okay. The other thing that can happen is that there's no follow-up, and when that happens, for example, and I'll say it this way. Sometimes there is the ghosting of the company, and sometimes there is the ghosting of the candidate. And so there are instances in which candidates will actually ghost a company. And what I have found, and that's kind of a newer phenomenon in transition for a lot of people in the corporate world, because you're like, wait a minute, you applied because you wanted the job, you applied because you wanted an opportunity. And then when we're ready to reach out to you, you're nowhere to be found. We can't find you. Where are you? And so that is a situation where maybe that candidate found another opportunity, found another job. And when they get reached out to schedule an interview or show up for, something for that first job that they applied to, they just don't have the ability, the comfortability to be able to say, you know what? I need to step up and I need to tell this company, no, I actually accepted another offer. No, I actually have already started with another company. You took too long. So I've already started with another company. And so there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who don't have those skill sets, who don't feel comfortable with the no, with giving people what they see in their mind, rejection, bad news. And so they'll just avoid. And they'll just say, you know what, because I don't feel comfortable telling this company that I've found another opportunity, then I'm just going to avoid them. And what I would recommend is, by all ways that you can potentially do this, at least give that company some type of feedback, just as though you would want them to give you some type of feedback if you had applied and you were still interested. So if you do fall out of the process and you have the recruiter's contact information, reach out and just say, hey, just want to give you an update. I actually accepted another offer today, yesterday, whatever the case may be, and I will no longer be pursuing this opportunity. Thank you so much for your time. And if anything changes, I'll let you know. It doesn't have to feel negative. It doesn't have to feel as though you are, oh, I'm just totally dismissing them. You don't have to treat it like it's a dating relationship. The company will be okay. You will be okay, but you can just let them know, all right, this is what happened. This is the new development. Oh, I've already, accepted another opportunity. Thank you so much for your time and consideration of my application. And if anything changes, I'll let you know. And it's always kind of good to put that in there so that way you're making it, from a comfortable space for you of saying, I was interested 100%. However, things have changed. And if they change again, I'd love to be able to reach back out and let you know, because it almost helps to make sure that you don't feel like you have to ghost them, because you are saying, if something does change, I'll definitely reach back out. I'll definitely be interested again. And so I feel like a lot of times, especially people in their 20s or people who are more tech savvy than maybe conversational savvy, are going to avoid and feel as though, no, I don't want to reject them. So therefore, I'm not going to say anything because I wouldn't want to be rejected. And we kind of have to take ourselves out of the equation for that and just do the right thing and make sure that that company is aware. Plus, you never know, that company could put you on some kind of like do not contact list or some way of them just saying, you know what, this was a person that didn't follow up, didn't follow through, ghosted us, no call, no show for an interview, something to that effect. And that can impact your future hireability with that company. So by all means, when it comes to the follow-up, it doesn't feel fair because the company might not follow up with you. And sometimes we just have to deal with that. But if you can at least follow up with the company, then you know that you're always in their good graces. And that's what's really important. Okay. And then lastly, it could be that there's just one person, like, especially if you interview and you feel like, hey, I'm not hearing anything, or I am getting a rejection and I didn't anticipate that I wasn't going to get this opportunity, or whatever the case may be. It could be one person. It could be that the entire panel really enjoyed speaking with you, enjoyed everything that you shared. And it can be one person on that panel who can sway the opinion or change the perspective of other people who are in on that interview. And so that one person could potentially outweigh the others, especially if they're in more of a leader role than the others on the panel. So if the main leader is the one who is like, I am not, really interested in this person. And it could even not be the hiring leader. The hiring leader could be on the panel interview, and then they have to go to their higher up to get an approval, and that higher up is like, no, they don't have this, they should have had that. Maybe it's a degree, a certification, things that may be a preference, but that senior leader is wanting it to be like a bare bone minimum, and maybe that's not the case. But if that leader doesn't feel like they can advocate for that candidate, then those could be situations as well as in which that candidate is not going to be able to move into the role, but also they may not feel as though they want to give specific feedback to the person because they may not even believe in the decision. They may not even agree with the decision. And they may try to avoid, because just because someone's a hiring leader doesn't necessarily mean that they have all of the tools that they need to be equipped with in order for them to have those tough conversations. And so they may say, I'm just going to kind of avoid. I'm not going to probably have a conversation with this person. Let's just kind of sweep it under the rug because I would have hired them, but I can't hire them. And I don't want to have to make up an excuse of why I'm not able to move forward with them. It's easier for a leader to do that with an external candidate than it is with an internal candidate that they can bump into every day, see in the hallway, see in the cafeteria, those types of things. So oftentimes they will have those conversations with an internal candidate, but from an external perspective, sometimes that just happens, especially if it's a truly small organization where there's not even a recruiter involved who's pressing the leader for feedback and what they can share with the candidate. And that leader is the person who, collects the resumes from ZipRecruiter, reviews the candidates, makes a decision, and then walks away from the process and doesn't do the follow-up. So again, depending on the company that you are going to work for or you're applying to, just depends on how they can handle certain situations. So those are just some ways in which, like I said, it's out of the control of the candidate and sometimes even out of the control of the leader when people get ghosted. So, and sometimes the candidate is the one doing all the ghosting. So that's not good either. So again, make sure that if you are a candidate that you are at least following up. You don't want to be on like a naughty list for any company or organization because you didn't do your part of following up, following through, and making sure that the company knows, hey, a new decision has been made. I accepted another offer, but just wanted to let you know, I really appreciate the time and effort that you gave to giving my information consideration, and I'll let you know in the future. That can go a really, really long way. But also just know some companies just have poor communication. It is what it is. And sometimes it's the recruiter, for example, that just doesn't follow up, doesn't follow through. Every single person in every single role isn't always worth their weight, and it's unfortunate because that means that they're probably not in a position in which that is their strength, right? If they're not able to follow up with the candidate and understand from a candidate's perspective how bad these candidates want to hear about the opportunity because of the fact that they're looking for work. They're trying to do the right thing. And you like slowing that process down, not following up or following through can really hinder that person from feeling as though they've been seen, that they are valued. And those same people who are your candidates, guess what? Sometimes they are also the customer of that company as well. So if you are applying at Verizon, for example, and you have a Verizon cell phone, then you may even second guess, like, well, do I need to move to T-Mobile? Because if this is how they're treating their candidates, they're not following up, they're not letting me know anything, then maybe this isn't the kind of company that I want to support with my dollars. So always keep that part in mind too. If you're someone who is a decision maker, that you don't want to leave candidates feeling like they haven't been seen, aren't valued, and truly are being ghosted, right? And then again, sometimes it's just going to be hiring freezes. It's going to be things that are going to happen that are going to be out of everyone's control, but those companies absolutely should follow up, make you aware, help you to understand, like, is this on hold? Is this completely a done process and I'm going to have to apply again? Or are you going to reach out to me and let me know when it's taken off hold if you are able to fill this opportunity that I can still be in consideration? So on that note, that's what we're sharing today on today's Show Me the Shift. So this has been the Career Corner, and I am hoping that from this conversation, you've taken away something that can help you to understand, like, why maybe I've been ghosted. Maybe my child has been ghosted or my partner has been ghosted in the hiring process, that it's not always just cut and dry, cookie cutter. Sometimes there are situations that can happen, come up, that hinder the process. And like a hiring freeze, nobody is in control of that. So on that note, I hope everybody is going to have an amazing rest of your Wednesday. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We're talking about a purpose topic. Not sure exactly what that's going to be yet, but show up and we'll talk about our purpose. Take care, everybody. Bye.